Hi and welcome to Mike's V8 Garage. This time it'll come as no surprise to those who've seen my previous videos that once again I'm dismantling my engine. So as I said in the intro, amazingly I am taking my engine to bits once again. So for those of you that have watched previous videos, you'll know this has been a bit of a thing with me and are probably wondering, what the heck is he doing now? When I went through all the previous work, we basically saw a complete top end refresh of the engine. So the initial problem that led me to do valve covers, spark plug seals and then dig in and things led to other things, was a cloud of smoke coming out the back on startup, which is pretty indicative of worn valve stem seals amongst other things. They were one of the things I definitely knew had to be replaced when I did the work. However, the cost of them at Lexus was over £10 per valve stem seal, so I went after market. They were installed by a decent garage, they did things properly, and when they put the two new valves in, they did all the stem seals. However, the company that I got these stem seals from is also the one that supplied me a turbo that had blast media still in the bearing cartridge, so that turbo died after 5 minutes on the car. They also sold me a bolt for a rear suspension arm on a V-dub Passat that was basically made of cheese and was getting carved up just being fitted, and there's been one or two other things where I bought from them, so I suspect that's where the problem lies. So now I'm going to have to go back in, strip off almost to the point of removing the heads to get the valve stem seals out without hopefully having to remove the heads again, because I really don't want to have to do that again. So in addition to most of the contents of this pegboard here, there's a few new additions, and the first thing I'm going to mention is the manual. I've had people ask me questions about different elements of what I've done, and basically everything I've done, once I'd learned my lesson by trying to cuff it, has been from using the actual service manual. And this one, or the source material for it, I got from eManual Online, which has pretty much anything for everything. So I'm literally going to be page by page, RTFM through this whole procedure. Other things I'm going to need for this is the service bolts to hold the cam gears in place, as before. And as a new thing, because I'm doing valve stem seals, I've had to order some new tools. So I've got a valve stem seal puller, and then these are where you install a new one. So seal goes in there, end piece goes on, tap it down, tap it into place. And in terms of getting to that point, this is it's a Lyle 360/50, and basically two tools just for different size of setup. And that's the installer. The whole point is you put this over the valve spring with the end cap on, tap on the hammer, and I'll show it later, but it retains the keepers and magnets there, and also retains the valve spring cap. Allows you to then take out the valve spring, and you've got the valve stem right there and there. Hopefully a good bit of kit, and I'll cover that in more detail later. So the car's up on stands, and one of the first things I need to do, because I'm going to be mucking about with the fuel system and the supply hose there just to get the cam covers off, I need to drain it as much as possible. And to do that, there's a relay there which you can just prise out, pop in the tab with a screwdriver, out that comes. A 25 amp fuse here, both of which is the relay and the fuse for the fuel pump, and then I just run the car until it doesn't run anymore. So that's the fuel system drained. All I need to do now is strip down everything as I've done before. Like I said, RTFM and a basic mix of 10, 12 and 14mm sockets, and you're pretty much there. So let's go to a time lapse. I've stopped the time lapse quickly because when I was getting the spark plugs out, an interesting tale was told. So this is spark plug from number 7, so a little bit lean but not too bad. Number 5, quite lean, but I think that's partly LPG, to be honest. Cylinder 3, and it's been dried off already, but that was oily as anything, and the back end of it was dry. The spark plug tube was dry, so that oil's come from inside the cylinder, and the only way it's getting in there is valve guides or valve stem seals. Number 1, no real issues, again a little bit lean maybe, but no massive dramas. That, however, concerns me, because if there's oil getting in, and I'll flash up quickly the video I took inside each of the cylinders. So we've definitely got an issue with cylinder 3 still, and considering that's where 2 new intake valves were put in, I'm wondering about the valve guides on those. But it'll be interesting to see what the other 4 spark plugs look like. Well, I've got the other 4 out, and they are all exactly the same. A little bit lean, but broadly okay, and the leanness is probably down to running LPG. And like I said, on the other side, same. Oh, wait a minute, what's that? So there's definitely problems with number 3 cylinder. So I've got a horrible feeling I'm going to have to take this head off and have a good close look at the valve guides. So that's one of the valve covers off. The one that's actually a little bit more difficult because of this shock tower in the way here, which is an absolute nightmare because all the bolts are really tucked in deep down there, but never mind, done it before. The main thing I want to do before I start doing the same on the other side is get all the timing gear off so I can get these camshafts out. Well, as a quick update, you didn't get the last of the time-lapse footage of me taking everything apart because quite frankly it was too windy and the camera kept blowing over. As I said, it's nothing I've not done before. All the timing gear's off the front end, including the crank pulley, which came off nice and easily, which I'm glad I greased it last time I put it on. Both cam covers are off, the camshafts are out, and that in itself tells a tale. And the intention now, before I move on with anything else, is to start having a look at these valves here. So my main suspects on why there's oil getting into that cylinder there is these 2 intake valves, which are both new. So what I'm going to do is get these intake valves out and have a look at their valve stem seals and valve guides and check the play, and then compare them to this cylinder and see if there's any difference, or see if I can see any visible damage to the valve guide. The other concern I have is I don't think I've got enough access to get the valve guide remover, sorry, the valve spring remover tool in there. I think the bank of the V is too tight. Basically, no matter where I go with this, I'm going to have to take the head off again. So, bit of investigation first, and then probably head off. Moving on in, there's all the timing gear down there, and I've got the camshafts laid out here. And the good thing is, when I was looking at the cam seals, there was no oil getting past them, so they're working, so that problem's been fixed. There's absolutely nothing at the joins of the VVT units, so again, that fix is working. And when I look at the camshaft lobes themselves, although there was slight pitting from them rusting a little bit last time, you can't feel it with your finger, and it's absolutely not resulted in any further wear. They're all in really good condition. And when I look at other lobes, they're really healthy. So the engine hasn't suffered from me dismantling it last time, which is good to see. One thing that did though is the bolts for the camshaft caps. 2 of them in particular started rounding out, and you can see this is one of them. And at that point, something that had been sat in the garage for about 4 years and used about once suddenly came into its own, because that bolt extractor kit, wrong one, that bolt extractor kit got these off. So definite recommend for these. I genuinely thought I was going to be a bit stuffed when those froze. I was going to have to Dremel them off or something like that. But no, made light work of both of them. And what I am going to do is order a full new set of bolts, because these ones have been in and out too many times now. They can be replaced. But yeah, so these can sit here for a while. Until then, let's get on with looking at these valves. Right, all the 12mm nuts and bolts holding the intake in are out. The fuel line's been disconnected and fed through, although I'm a bit concerned I've kinked the pipe there, so I'll need to investigate that later. Everything's free at the top. Wiring loom's disconnected at the back. And this sensor here, which is already connected, I'm going to attach or reattach quickly so that it doesn't snag on the way out. But as you can see, by doing it this way, I've managed to leave the injectors, the fuel rail and the fuel pulsation dampers all nicely in place. And theoretically what I should be able to do now, avoiding it snagging back there, is to just lift the manifold off. All good. Now I just need to lift it out carefully, because there is a large vacuum canister right in there that can foul on this water crossover if you're not careful. But really then it's just a little bit of, oh dear, finagling. Careful not to damage anything else while you lift the thing out. And always it's these pipes at the back that foul every flipping time. There we go. Intake manifold is out. I just need to be careful when laying it down, because as you can see there's a whole load of stuff under there and you don't want to get that damaged. So that's the intake that I didn't expect to have to take off again, and all the RTV I used, which worked actually really well, has been scraped off. I'll obviously give it a full clean later. Now it's on to getting the head off, and to do that, yes, I've got to get these crossovers off, but first I've got to drain the coolant, otherwise that's going to spew everywhere, and as much as I can get out the head. But before I do even that, I need to disconnect at the exhaust end, which means getting the catalytic converter undone. So if I go under the car, there is the catalytic converter, and I think it's 14s are holding that on, and obviously you need to secure the other side. That's all been done recently, so that should be fine. And then right up at the back is the other ends of the cat. Take those off, and then there's a bracket tucked way up in the back, which you can't see, but I'll show it to you when the head's off, where the O2 sensor is. Massively tight. And the other thing that's got to come off is this bracer here, transmission connected to the transmission. Connected to the transmission. So again, all these off, which allows it to move a bit. All of those off, and then the cat's out. Nice and tight working conditions. So the catalytic converter's out. So now what I'm doing is draining the coolant, because what I don't want to happen is when I take these galleys off, crossovers off and the head off, for half of the coolant that I just swapped out recently to go all over the floor. So what I'm doing is I've got the stopcock open on the block, and I'm currently just gradually siphoning out the coolant from there into one of the old containers which I kept, and therefore keep it nice and fresh and uncontaminated. And this is just a Silverline coolant or oil suction bleeding kit. Quite useful. Keep one for oil, one for coolant. Obviously don't want to mix those. And I'm just pulling the oil out, the coolant out, sorry, about half a litre at a time. Slow, but it gets the job done. And isn't too messy either. So that'll take me about another half an hour probably, and then once we've got the block drained enough, I'll get the crossovers off, and then really it's just head bolts, a couple of other little brackets, and off comes the head again. Well, that should be enough coolant drained. There's a good 5-6 litres come out. So 4 12mm bolts here, nuts rather, 12mm bolt there, and then I think there's another one. I think it's that long one there. Yes. So that you can bring the thermostat housing out with it and avoid having to buy too many gaskets. So now we should, there we go, be able to remove the water neck. Alright, first crossover's off. I just need to get this second one off, and to do that there's a little bolt there and a bolt there for that loom that needs to be pushed back just to give you space to work. And then a little gotcha I didn't notice first time round. There's a little earth or loom clip on there as well, held in by a 10mm bolt, which I think I've got turning now. There we go. So that's now the loom fully free, and I can get to that final 12mm for the rear crossover. There we go. Right, and now it's time to do the head bolts. Right, I'm now ready to get the head off. Here goes. There we go. Out of there, you so-and-so. One head off again. Right, so that looks okay. Didn't get a mad rush of coolant this time, which is always good. That's the rear cylinder, so that's number 7, which looks pretty healthy. 5, other than stuff leaking past, so fine. 3, that does not look good. And then 1. And looking at the pistons, bar the slight leakage, and as you can see, that one there is noticeably different from these. Well, it's now a few days after the day I took the head off, and in that time I got the left-hand head into a machine shop that I've used, same one that did the work on the intake, and what's come back is that the 2 exhaust valve guides on the cylinder that I was suspicious of are fairly worn, and the other 6 exhaust valve guides are a little bit worn but broadly okay. But what I've said to them therefore is, well, first after checking the intake valve guides were okay, which apparently they all were, which was interesting. I thought that was where my issue lay, but no, it's the exhausts. But having discovered 2 worn valve guides, I decided there's no point just changing those 2, especially with the hotter combustion of LPG. The other guides are only going to continue to wear. The exhaust side runs hotter, it wears quicker. So I set them to do all 8. And then I thought, well, if that side's like that, what about the right hand side? And the astute amongst you will have noticed that this is not the left hand head, and that's because it's still at the machine shop awaiting its brother to arrive, which I've just taken off there, and I'm going to get its exhaust valve guides done as well, because I think, again, it'd be silly not to, and I really, really, really do not want to have to take these heads off again. But what I'm going to do now is get this manifold off, get to the head, and then show you the removal of the valve springs, the keepers, and the valve stem seals. Right, so that's the exhaust manifold off, which was a bit more of an epic than I thought, thanks to one of the studs coming out with one of the nuts. But now what I need to do is get the buckets and the shims out initially, and then move to get the valve springs and all the rest of it out. So first things first, intake 1, 2. So as you can see, one of the old magnetic retrieval tools is really useful for that, and these sort of little basic telescopic ones work well. And as you can see, you've got the, let's get that out, you've got the bucket itself, and then you've got the shim, which I've already set, having done the valve clearances already. But again, if I'm going to be redoing exhaust guides, I'm probably going to find that those are going to have to be done again. But anyway, that's for another day. Having now exposed the tops, the valve spring caps and the valve springs, and obviously you can see the shaft of the valve there, what I now need to do is just brace up the underside so that the valves can't move down, and then that's where the Lyle tool comes in, the Lyle 36050, I think it is, yeah, the 36050, which, as I found out on the other head, is an absolute godsend for doing this. So all I need to do is to get the right sized tool. There's another larger one, but it won't fit in the bore of that. So this has a little magnet in there to capture the keepers. It fits around the head of the cap, forces it down around the valve, grabs the keepers, and then the whole thing comes away, as I'll demonstrate now. And you heard a little click there, and that's because the head, or the cap rather, is now in there. You can see the keepers are now caught in there, and the valve spring just comes out, and it is as simple as that. It really is. So I now need to just go through, get the keepers out as well, and I find a little pick tool is useful for that. And just be careful you don't drop them. So far I've managed to avoid doing that. And the main thing is getting them out of there, because that was quite a strong magnet. There we go. So that's the keepers out. And the only thing remaining now is the valve stem seal, and for that I've got a pair of valve stem seal pliers. Get them around the valve stem seal, grip on, twist, pull, and there's your valve stem seal. Really is as simple as that. Now I've just got to do that a further 15 times on this head, and it's all good. So this will be wrapped up in about a month's time when I put the heads back on. But until then, if you've liked watching this again, because this is now the third time I've had this engine apart, then please give us a like down below. Consider subscribing to see whether or not I ever end up with a working engine and a working car at the same time. And positive or negative, don't mind which, but comment down below, tell me what you think, what could be done better, and so on and so forth. But that's a wrap for this time. Thank you very much.